Good evening. I would like to call the August 9th City Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeal Board meeting to order. We will have the welcome and roll call, please.
Christopher Caldwell, excused. Louis Garcia, excused. Curtis Gardner.
Here.
Oliver Howell is excused. Barbara Miller, excused. Chair Vernon Payne.
Here.
Susan Stapleton.
Here.
Larry Tolbert.
Present.
Ebony Hemphill.
Here.
Good evening. Thank you for being here tonight in person and as well as the city's live streaming platforms. Masks are no longer required in City Hall and the City Commission chambers. However, attendees should continue to practice social distancing. Your cooperation and compliance with these rules are appreciated. Public comments will be accepted during the times as indicated on today's meeting agenda. Community members that wish to provide public comments over the phone can call 888-382-9556 during the citizen comments period. They will enter a queue and will be prompted to offer their comments in turn. Callers will be commenting to the board live and will no longer be able to leave a recorded message.
Thank you. At this point in the meeting, it was my intention to ask the board to review and approve the consent agenda, having the ability to remove from that consent agenda without objection from any other board member any item of their choosing. However, because this would be new to our board, and also because we have 4 board members who could not be with us tonight, I will forego asking that the consent agenda be included in our process prior to the beginning of the regular agenda. So with that said, we will proceed to the adoption of the minutes. You also received the consent agenda more than 5 days in advance. So for the reasons I've expressed, that's why I am taking that off the agenda. We will proceed with the adoption of the minutes. You received the minutes, all of those. You've had an opportunity to review them. Are there any changes, deletions, additions to the minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the minutes.
Make the motion to adopt the minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Minutes are adopted. We will have the PCR report.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening. Check one, check one. Check one, much better. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, and Director Dusick. We provided you with the most current PCR complaints that's dating from January of this year all the way up to July for your review. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
I just had a point of clarification on the grid. Under March 17, there are a number of complaint types that are from occurring in the past.
Yes.
On last month's sheet, they were listed as still open. This one has no indication as whether they're open or closed.
Are you talking about the one where it says close it and it has a dash, 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 dash?
Yes,
Okay, so that was one complainant that had multiple allegations, and they were all closed out.
okay, thank you for
So
that.
under one, thank you.
Right.
Chief,
Yes,
in June, you got one that says exonerated misconduct other. What was that?
which
It
one?
said it was completed in June
Yeah, but which number are we talking about?
22, 23.
22, 23.
Third page.
Give us one moment where it's, yeah, there it is. I think everybody
Last
remember
page.
Inspector Mason here, yes. Which one?
Chief Green, it's
I see it.
2233.
Yes, so there was two complaints. One was that there was said improper investigation, which was exonerated. And the second complaint that was made under the same one is rudeness and unprofessional, and it was misconduct of other. So it's two complaints, same person, or
Okay.
same complainant, and we divided up to find out how do we make resolution on each of the two complaints.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
Mr. Tolbert?
Just wondering for the people who are listening, a lot of times we use acronyms that they may not understand. We said PCR report, public safety, community relations. Okay, so I was just saying in the future, we get used to some of these acronyms, but anyone who's listening have a question mark in their head, exactly what are the acronyms they're using?
Yeah.
I was wondering in the future, could we just, say what it is, then the acronym after it for a couple
Absolutely.
times?
So public safety, community relations, we're talking about PCR complaints. So thank you very much. It's a good point. William, please have a good way of making all these shortcuts and everything.
That's every organization.
Okay, that's good to know then. Thank you.
Chief Green, I have a question,
Sure.
please. Are 100% of citizens' complaints accepted and investigated?
Yes, yes, they are accepted and they are investigated.
So if someone shows up and files a complaint and appropriately and has a discussion with that officer is obligated to move that complaint forward. Or in the alternative, are some complaints handled at the point of contact with the department?
Sure. So if you wanted to make a complaint against an officer at the scene and you asked for a command officer, if it was resolved at that level, the command officer would take that information. But anyone can come in at any time to file a complaint. And we even take complaints third party, phone, email, etc. So we do look into every concern that someone brings to our department.
So the real question is, do we track that type of contact and communications with the citizens and log that in any way? Or if I am a citizen and I have contact with our police department and that complaint is not moved forward, is that data kept and tracked?
So if I'm hearing your question correctly, if someone comes in and says that they want to file a complaint against an officer, and a complaint is filed, when they say yes, they want to file a complaint, yes, that is recorded and tracked.
Does that show up in the data?
If it's an official complaint that our division, Internal Affairs, have covered,
No, if it's
yes.
resolved at the point of contact.
No, it would show up elsewhere. So what do I mean by that? If I'm a sergeant on patrol and someone wants to file a complaint against an officer, or they want to not even make a complaint, they want to get some clarification, that sergeant can easily write that in what's called the DAR, Daily Activity Report, to show that I made contact, for example, with Chairman Payne, and wrote it in. They did not want to make official complaint, if I'm understanding. If it's an official complaint where someone says, I want a complaint made against an officer, and we open an investigation, then it will come to us for review. Am I missing your question, sir?
Well, the gist of the question is that every citizen in Kalamazoo should be afforded access to the process, the complaint and appeal process. If citizens, for whatever reasons, are making contact and they are not plugged into that process, and perhaps for legitimate reasons, I think it's important that that data be maintained so that if, for example, in some precincts, complaints are not forwarded more so than in other precincts, then that data may be helpful when we go back and try to analyze access to the process by citizens, by neighborhood. And so I guess what I'm encouraging is that somehow we have a process or a method to track that data so that as a part of our responsibilities, we're supporting the community and ensuring that every citizen has access to the process. And that may require more work and be beyond our resources, I'm not sure. But I think it's important data to maintain.
Yeah. So, and the inspector just brought up another point. Even if someone makes an inquiry, not even a complaint, we track that also.
Good. That's good to know because I think part of the board's responsibility is to safeguard the public's access to this process.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Agenda item 5.
Excuse me, Chairman,
Sure, I'm sorry.
One more. The inspector just brought something to the attention. So going back to your original question, Mr. Tolbert, dealing with 2233. I'm sorry, Mr. Gardner, I apologize, Director. So the original complaint came in as an improper investigation. During our investigation, we established there was another complaint that we found from it. And that's how we made another finding. That makes sense to you. So the original complaint came in as it was an improper investigation. Then in our investigation through Internal Affairs, we found that there was another policy that was violated, and we then added that as another complaint or another finding to it. So that's where you get that misconduct other, because we found something else that was involved in the investigation.
From the same complainant?
For the same complainant, correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Green and Inspector Mason. Thank you for the report. Review of the activity tracker updates, please.
Sure. I want to remind everyone that the upcoming community outreach opportunity for C-SCRAB members is August 27th. Let me repeat that, August 27th, at the Northside Ministerial Alliance, NMA, Carnival. Details will be shared via email to all board members as we get closer to the event date. So I wanted to put that on your calendar, and we'll share more details as soon as we have them.
A question. I was fortunate to attend the previous outing with the community. But my question is, given these community outreach opportunities, and there probably will be more going forward, the one with the Northside Ministerial Alliance and the Carnival, in addition to members passing out business cards, is there any anticipation of having a table for the board, a pop-up banner, providing the citizens with materials that access the complaint process, maybe brochures that have been prepared, as opposed to the board member simply being present with a card? Is that something that's been planned or is in the planning process?
So I would refer to the board yourselves on that. If you want to have that preference, please let us know, and we can work toward that. And to a prior conversation, there will be the availability for shirts to identify yourself at these events. And I will move forward with getting you that information as well.
I was very impressed with the police presence at the event that I attended. I thought that the officers did an outstanding job in reaching out not only to the citizens, but to the children as well. And so that was an enjoyable event for me to attend. But I found myself standing there with only cards and approaching people with my business cards when others had tables and they had banners and they had information to hand out. And so I encourage you to take that into consideration when you make these recommendations to the board. Thank you. Go, please.
And definitely, yes. Excuse me, if that is something you're interested in, please let's work together on providing that, what you need. I have no updates to the activity tracker. However, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Joshua Schaefer, who has worked diligently with the city manager's office and with C-SCRAB and with HR. His last day with us will be Thursday. He is going to be going back to school. So we want to take this time to thank you, Josh, for all your efforts and all your hard work. You will be missed.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Appreciate your support and look forward to you finishing strong and arranging those subcommittee meetings with the, with the various subcommittee members. Thank you so much. Moving on to our next agenda item. Excuse me. Thank you. I'm looking at the wrong agenda. Here, I got it. Oh, yes. This item, excuse me for not going right to it, but it was included in the consent agenda that was not being presented this evening. That's why I was moving on. But it's not in, we did not deal with the consent agenda this evening, so it's on the agenda. This is one of those types of items that is an up or down item that I think the board can handle prior to putting it on a regular agenda. With that said, currently the board time commitment policy states that members must spend approximately 4 or 5 hours a calendar quarter reviewing cases and attending meetings. This ranges from 16 to 20 hours per year. Due to member outreach and subcommittee commitment, we are proposing to boost the time commitment to 2 hours per month or 24 hours per calendar year. I will open that item up for discussion, comment. Is there, sorry.
I find no problem with it.
Neither do I. That's probably the least amount of time anyone will spend working on this anyway.
I also agree, and I think it's important for this board to be as visible as possible so that individuals understand not only the process, but that opportunity exists.
I don't have a problem with it either.
Thank you so much. I'm not sure if this board has the ability to adopt this as a policy or a part of our policies and procedures, but I will call for a motion to adopt this as one of our policies, to adopt this into our policies and procedures. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we revise our policies and procedures based upon Section 5A of the agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Same opposed? Nay? The ayes have it. Motion carries. We have discussed the community outreach opportunity. Board member comments, please.
Were you going to the Citizens Safety and Review Board as far as the committee I'm on, which is the traffic stop study? I've been trying to get information on that. I know you sent me a link, and it was an outreach, and I spent quite a bit of time trying to open it up, and I could not open it up. Then I also went and tried to just go about a roundabout way and try to get information. And I can see some of the articles discussing the study, but I could not find the study. I was wondering whether or not KPS has that study, and I could just be emailed that study.
Thank you, Mr. Tolbert. Yes, to your question, KDPS did provide that to me via email yesterday, so I will be sending that to you.
Very good indeed.
Did you know that?
No, I did not know that. I've been trying to get it for a little while now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I apologize for not sending, take you right to that information. So I was trying.
I appreciate it. I really do.
Thank you.
And I should, I'll get deep into it this month. And I know I'll spend more than a couple hours on it.
I believe there's also, or should be, some documents or information that can be provided to you, Member Tolbert, that pertains to KDPS's efforts over the past 10 years to implement the recommendations from that report. That would be good information for you to have, and for the board to have, and for the community to have as we go forward and provide the citizens with its first annual report in probably 10 years. And so the goal is to provide the citizens with a comprehensive report covering that span of time. And so your efforts are certainly appreciated and an important part of that.
Thank you, Chair Payne. I appreciate everything you do.
Any other board comments? I have a comment discussion item for us. You all recently received information on an appeal that was denied at the city manager's level. That particular appeal was not forwarded to the board as per board, KDPS, and CMO codified policies and procedures. To wit, the city manager shall promptly refer the matter to the Citizens Public Safety Review and Appeal Board. In this instance, OIR Group replaced or assumed the board's advisory role in the process. The question I have, and I direct this to the CMO staff, is that this third party, OIR, is not codified in our policies and procedures of operations. And is this something that can occur again? Is this a pattern of practice that the board should expect, that a third party can step in at some point in time and replace the board's function? That's my question.
I'm going to ask Chief Green to please address that as best as he can, and that may be a question that we'll need to get back to you on.
If I heard the question correctly, you're asking, I think the situation that we have here was an exception because it was during the 2020, if I'm not mistaken, if we're looking at the same one, it's dealing with the 2020 complaint that we had. And we had a third party that came in, and all the complaints that came in under that 2020 incident was handled through this special group, the OIR group. And the agreement was that any complaints that came in, it would have been investigated by this special investigation, which the department was completely reviewed by this third party about the actions. So will it happen in the future? I don't see it happening in the future because of the special incident that happened in 2020.
The question, the baseline question is whether or not the board should be engaged in the process regardless.
Right.
That's the baseline question. Because if a third party can be engaged in this instance, a third party can be engaged in other instances that are not foreseeable right now. And so I think it's important for the board and for KDPS and the city manager's office to understand, and the citizens importantly, to understand that that possibility is there, that this board's function can be replaced by a third party. And I would assume that the city manager's office and KDPS makes that decision and not the board.
Yeah. And one of the most interesting things, Chairman, I think this was new to everyone. So if it should ever happen again, which we hope it doesn't, that we would know what other steps there might be to take.
I bring this issue up because citizens have an expectation, and rightly so in my opinion, that KDPS, the board, and the city manager's office will adhere to and follow published policies and procedures of operations. And if we're to deviate from that, then I think the citizens should be aware and know that that is a possibility, that this board's responsibilities to the citizens can be abrogated in certain situations. And if that's the policy, but it's not in the procedures manual. The other question I have is that when that occurred, did that have any impact on Order 16?
Sorry, on what, sir?
Did that have any impact on KDPS Order 16? When you deviated from the process, were there any implications for the officers in the department covered under Order 16?
There was no deviation. Are you asking, there was any deviation from our General Order 16? During 20, I don't believe so, and I'm only hesitant because, to my knowledge, no.
Okay. And perhaps my colleague can answer the question specifically. In the contract negotiation process, I think that those complaints come to our board, and our board makes a recommendation to the city manager's office. Well, that process did not take place. And so the question is, does it have an impact on the city's relationship through Order 16 with the police department?
No, it shouldn't be. And again, this was a rare exception of what occurred.
Bear with me here for a second. Now, here's the other issue that is raised from a citizen's perspective. This board, the board members, are citizens serving in a fair and unbiased process without compensation, devoted to this process as it will serve to the benefit to the department, to management, to citizens and the officers. On the other hand, OIR, and correct me if I'm wrong, is a paid, compensated consultant to the city manager's office with a contract. This board does not have that type of relationship with the city. And so it is very, very important when making these decisions that these decisions be made in a transparent way, because it potentially could have a negative impact on transparency and trust when I'm paying the arbiter. Does that concern, is that concern valid or not?
To my understanding, although I wasn't here, so I'm going by what I was advised, that during this, when they brought on this third party, that it was agreement made that because of the complaints that came in, that it was going to be investigated by this party, third party, with the findings, to remove public safety out of that investigation. That was my understanding at the time. Although I wasn't here, so I can't speak to it completely. But what I can do, if you like, Chairman, at the next meeting, I can come back with the specific language and agreements that were made during this unusual time. When I say unusual, unique time as far as what occurred. I don't want to
Yeah, thank you.
speak about it.
Thank you for that. The other question that this whole situation in this particular case raises is whether or not the published policies and procedures of operations included but not limited to Section 9A1 be revised based on the OIR precedent. Does this section need to be rewritten in the policies and procedures of operations? Because deviating from our policies is not accounted for. And so as codified in our policies and procedures.
Okay, and I heard 9, what was the section again, please?
It's Section 9, A1.
Okay.
And it deals with the basic processes of this board. And it does not include third-party intervention. And so the question is whether or not that needs to be rewritten to include the possibility that these types of situations would occur going forward.
And to Chief Green's statement earlier, we would like to bring this back to the next meeting so we can address these things once we review them.
Thank you for that. Yes, please.
I believe that going forward, all appeals should be coming to this board and not to a third party. And to rewrite something into a policy that we already have, that would need to be agreed on, but I don't think that is the intent of the board or the citizens in this community, to have a third party come in and have an appeal go to that third party instead of coming to this board. And I think Chair Payne has raised a very valid point, is that, you know, we're here trying to go out into the community and promote our review board. And, you know, even though this was a 2020 issue, I don't think going forward we would expect anything like that to ever happen again.
It's a 2020 issue.
I understand it's a 2020 issue, but it happened in 2022.
Yes, sir. But the board was only made aware of it recently, although it happened in 2022. The process that was started, the board was not involved in that. And so thank you for the opportunity to have this conversation on this very important issue, in my opinion. There was another issue raised around this particular concern, and that there were examples of issues creating uncertainty in the process involving inconsistent instructions, communications, lack of timeliness, all of those things around this particular appeal and complaint and appeal. It's my understanding that those issues were addressed and cleared up across several different platforms. Is my understanding correct?
Correct.
And so the policies and the procedures of operations for this board were changed without specifically informing the board what those changes were.
The department made the changes to the recommendations that were made by the OIR group, and we've made it, yes, public for everyone to see. But
My point is, the board
yes, I hear you.
was not engaged in or consulted with when someone made the decision to change the board's policies and procedures, although I think it was a very good thing to do. But again, the board, I don't believe, was consulted about those particular changes. Now, is that precedent is the next question.
No, I wouldn't say it's precedent. I think this was just a unique situation.
Unfortunately, I'm not a lawyer or anything, but in reality, people who are looking at this from the outside will see this as a precedent and see this as something that was done out of the ordinary and very different from current policy. And while no one would like to necessarily see this happen again, this opens the door for other actions to take place outside of policy.
Thank you.
May I ask, is it improper to revisit that appeal?
I think that it would be proper for us to continue to look at that issue and all of the other issues that we have discussed and raised this evening, because they are germane to the functioning, the trustworthiness of this board, and quite frankly, whether or not we are operating as we say we are operating publicly to the citizens in this community. So I think it is critical that these issues be addressed.
I think it's going to be helpful when we come back. We'd be happy to come back next month, but all of the findings and the recommendations are on the transparency page. But I hear what you're saying. We can
Sure.
go on complete update next month.
Sure. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
The other question I have is, can you provide the board, and I don't think it's necessarily you, Chief Green, with an update on the roster of the community members who have been trained to serve as advocates for citizens during any mediation or appeal of a complaint? It is in our policies and procedures of operations that the city will be responsible for training advocates for our citizens and keep that list of names on file. This has been a part of the policies and procedures of operations manual for years, and I'm simply asking that the city manager's office provide us with that list of names now, if you have them. Does it exist? Do we have any?
I will need to respond to this concern question at the next meeting as well.
Thank you. I think I'll end my, I've taken a lot of time with my comments and questions, and I apologize to the board for that, but I felt that it was important that I do, so I apologize.
No apology necessary.
Yeah, please don't
It
apologize.
was warranted, you know, because we're about transparency. So, thank you, Chairman.
I think, are there any in-person comments? I see that there are none. Are there any call-in citizen comments?
Just one moment, Chair.
Are there any? Maybe I didn't hear. Just a moment. Thank you.
My apologies, Chair. We usually give a few seconds for the calls to come in, and no, there are none. Thank you.
There are none in the queue. Thank you. One of the reasons why I recommend to this board that this board seriously look at incorporating and adopting a consent agenda, because it will provide time for this board to have conversations and discussions that I think are important and will accrue to the benefit of the community. And if we can agree on a consent agenda and move some of those routine items over there without having to discuss them in detail, it will open up more time for address more vital issues of interest to the board and to the citizens. With that said, our upcoming meetings are September 13th and October 11th. I'll entertain a motion for the board to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
Support.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.